Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/entitled people. In today's episode, I finally told my father's infantilizing friend that I hate him. Entitled Todd strikes again. Breaks when WFH. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I finally told my father's infantilizing friend that I hate him. Years ago, my dad met Harold through mutual friends, and they hit it off. I was 18 and in college when I met him, and we never had a close relationship. However, he always seemed to think of himself as a family friend, and was extremely infantilizing and condescending towards me. Every time I saw him, I tried to tell myself it wasn't that bad, only for him to prove me wrong less than a minute later. Harold would disrespect my boundaries, say things like "you're not 19, you're a baby" while I was talking to other people, and patronize me, my education or my hobbies whenever he had the chance. He always noticed that annoyed me, to which he'd playfully ask if I hated him. I always said no, but only for my father's sake. The final straw came the day Harold interrupted a barbecue to say, "I really like you, even though you're an impolite brat." I was 20 years old. I'd been quiet all day, working on a paper during the barbecue, but replied patiently and politely whenever anyone addressed me. And even if that hadn't been the case, I knew he didn't have the right to talk to me like that. After that, I started making an effort to avoid any events I knew he'd be attending. Yesterday was my father's girlfriend's birthday. They threw a small lunch party at my dad's apartment. I went there with my fiancé and our 6-month-old son. Harold was there. I hadn't seen him in months, but he still talked to me as if I was a dumb child. Never mind that I'm engaged, a mother, and 26 years old. I spent the whole party ignoring his helpful advice about me being too young to get married or be a mom. It helped that most of the other guests seemed to disagree with him. My baby spent most of the afternoon sleeping. There's a bassinet in my old room. He woke up hungry, so I went to breastfeed him and excused myself from the party for a while. I got back to jokes and comments, all from Harold, about how I was probably struggling if my son was managing to leech me away for so long. He went on to interrupt a conversation I was having with another of my dad's friends to question pretty much everything about my parenting. He doesn't even have custody of his daughter, by the way, and to make more comments about my age. I decided I couldn't take it anymore after he asked if I'd thought about giving my baby up for adoption. I got my son and told my fiancé we were leaving. We said goodbye to everyone except Harold. When we got to the door, Harold came to ask why we were leaving. I tried to make up an excuse, but he kept trying to make us stay. After a small back and forth, he jokingly asked if I hated him. And this time, I said, "Yes, I do. Can we go now?" He didn't say anything, and we left. On the way home, my fiancé said he was proud of me. My father called this morning to say the opposite, and we had a small fight, but ultimately decided to drop the subject. I'm sure this isn't over, but if it keeps going, it won't be because of me. This is far from my proudest moment, and a small part of me regrets it, but I'm done with that guy. Edit, to answer some common questions. I don't think Harold is in love with me. Harold didn't tell me to give up my son. He asked if I'd thought of doing so when I got pregnant. It was still an awful question, especially since he interrupted a conversation I was having with someone else, my dad's girlfriend's pregnant friend, who was asking about my own pregnancy and delivery, to ask it. I don't like making a big deal out of things unless necessary. If I'm uncomfortable, I leave. If I don't like someone, I avoid them. It's usually less stressful. The fight between me and my father ended when I told him about the adoption comment. I don't think he gets that's not the only reason I left, but it was definitely what broke the camel's back. I really don't need my father to stop being friends with Harold. He's a grown man capable of making his own crappy decisions. I never told my dad I hated Harold because I never thought I had to like him in the first place. He's my father's friend, not mine. And I've been distancing myself from Harold since I was 20, meaning I haven't seen him much in the last 6 years. My fiancé was on the other side of the room and wasn't listening to Harold's comments. I filled him in when we got to the car. He's 100% on my side. Does your dad know this friend suggested you putting up dad's grandchild up for adoption? If not, I'd bring it up with the two of them together at your earliest convenience. It was one of the first things I told him on the phone. It was also part of what ended the fight. He should, but chances are he will get the "oh, you know how he is, that's just his personality." He was only kidding. Your dad is the grand AH. I mean, not to stereotype, but he is divorcee with adult kids and his friends are acting like this? Any father I know would have stopped it at the first joke, making it clear that my child's life might be funny but not a joke. And this guy? Never mind him. No one needs him. At best, he is nobody. At worst, he has S*X fantasies about you and is salty when he finally was told it would never happen. NTA. Though it's probably true, I'm sure that you just gave OP nightmares. And this guy? Never mind him. No one needs him. At best, he is nobody. This is savage and royally true. No custody of his daughter, probably divorced, no interest from OP, he literally is nobody for at least 3 people. If you ever run into Harold and his insulting remarks again, it's time to turn them around on him. If he calls you a baby, call him a geezer. If he calls you an impolite brat, say it takes one to know one. If he says you're probably struggling as a parent, tell him, well, you'd know all about struggling as a parent, wouldn't you? Your father shouldn't have anything to object about. Tell him that Harold is the one who's been impolite to you all these years and Harold needs to check himself. I'm sorry, but you're too nice. This isn't joking, it's belittling and needling. He obviously gets some kick out of lording over you, and you're nicer than I would be because I would have said way worse than "yes, I hate you." Also, your dad's an AH, and if he thinks it's appropriate for his friend to talk to his daughter that way, I would be seriously reconsidering my relationship with my dad. Entitled Todd Strikes Again. So I mentioned in my earlier post that I had a few stories about Todd, my next door neighbor who asked for a copy of my grandma's will because he was certain she left him something. That was my first encounter with Todd. This is the last known encounter with Todd, but it was my neighbor's encounter, not mine. Todd had lived in his house for about 10 years before I moved next door. His house was in foreclosure when I arrived, and a year later, he was gone. To say the entire street was relieved is an understatement. There may have been a parade. An investor bought the house for a ridiculous amount and flipped it. The new owner didn't do much to the house after he moved in. He was a great neighbor, and when he passed away, we all missed him. The next owners, current owners, moved in and started really renovating the place. When the house was initially flipped, everything they did was simply cosmetic. These houses were built in the 50s, so a lot of things were seriously outdated. Plumbing had to be redone, electrical had to be redone, kitchen wasn't remodeled correctly and had to be gutted. These poor people are pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into this house, but they love the house and the neighborhood, so it's all worth it to them. The new family had begun making very obvious changes to the house. First, they took out a planter's bed attached to the house and are working towards a more natural landscape. We live in a very desert climate, so keeping grass can be kind of hard on the water bill. The next thing they did was start taking down a humongous palm tree that was literally planted in the middle of their 3-car driveway. Todd initially had a 1-car driveway. He planted the tree and then paved around it to make the driveway bigger. But by now, it had grown so big that you could only fit 1 car comfortably, and a second car had to be partially on the yard. Beginning work on that tree brought Todd out from under his rock. From what I understand, Todd had actually moved back to the state about a year or so after he left and is currently living with his father just a few blocks away. One day, he knocked on their door and demanded to know why they were taking down his tree. The wife, let's go with Amanda, was flabbergasted. I had told her Todd's stories here and there, and she said she was simultaneously starstruck and confused as hell. He repeated his demand of knowing why they were cutting down his tree. He said they could not cut that tree down, it's his, he planted it when he first moved in and he did not give them permission to cut it down. He then asked about the basketball hoop, which was also installed in the driveway. She said that was coming down too. He was angry. His kids played with that hoop, they grew up with it. Why would they take down a perfectly good basketball hoop and a perfectly healthy tree, especially when they didn't have permission? It seems Todd was under the impression that even if the house was no longer his, certain things around the house were. The tree, the basketball hoop, and the blocks from the planter. He didn't want those things. But he fully expected to be asked for his permission before making changes to those things, and he made it clear he would not give it. Because they were his, and he wanted them left right where they were. At some point, Amanda's brain kicked in. And Amanda is spiteful as all get out. She gave Todd a few choice words and told him to get off her property, that if he wanted his tree, he could haul it to own house on the back of his bicycle for all she cared, but it was coming down. And if she saw him on her property again, he was going to meet her 3 dogs, and they loved the taste of trespassers. When the tree came down and before they got the wood hauled off, they set the pile at the corner of the street with a great big sign that said Todd's tree. Amanda says she has not seen him since and I have yet to see him, so I think all is peaceful in the neighborhood again. These stories, LOL. Got some more? I have a few more that could probably all fit in one post. These 2 were the absolute cream of the crop though. I'm agreeing with you. Awesome. His name should be entitled LOL. LMAO. I almost choked to death from laughter. Water came out of my nose, thanks. Todd's tree, ha 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 ha. I actually snorted with laughter when I read that. Beautifully done. Gotta give it to Todd, it must be difficult riding a bicycle with those gargantuan balls. Breaks when WFH. We had a team meeting with the VP. As we all work from home, the VP told us that it was important to respond to messages sent on Teams during working hours within a reasonable time frame. Max 30 minutes. A colleague took the floor. She said it was an abusive request, since no one who works from home is in front of their computer 100% of the time. It's normal to stretch and take breaks. That if she's constipated and stuck in the toilet, she won't be able to respect the rule. I don't know what to think of her intervention. But I think she's going to get fired for this. Yeah. Calling the VP's request abusive, and then talking about your bowel activity is a bit unstrategic? 30 minutes is not that unreasonable, and I'm sure they forgive the occasional lapse because someone is stuck on the toilet for too long. Exactly. Ick if she wanted to make joke? But she implicitly said that she wasn't working during work hours. 30 minutes is super reasonable, and put Teams on your phone, so if you are not at your desk, you know to get back and deal if needed. It is not that hard. Your colleague sounds sus, and is probably one of the people specifically targeted with your VP's message. People like her are the reason companies are pushing so hard to get everyone back in the office. 30 minutes is abusive? At my job, I got written up for not responding within, no kidding, 2 minutes. After discussing how messages impact my concentration and thus the quality of my work, my boss took it a step further and put it in my annual performance review despite telling me after a few months that I made significant progress in my response time. I didn't tell her that the number of messages had dropped significantly. But I did show her a screenshot of one of her favorite team members not responding to a message for a full 18.5 hours despite it being urgent. People don't seem to care about their credibility, or maybe they don't even realize staff keeps track of them acting like AHs. Your coworker is the reason a lot of companies are wanting people back in the office, because while most are more productive, there are a few who do abuse being home to do things beside work that they would not be able to if they were in the office. It is perfectly reasonable to expect you to respond within 30 minutes during the workday while not at lunch. For her to say we are not in front of our computers 100% of the time is ridiculous, because she is literally being paid to be in front of her PC for the hours they are paying her. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.